Good afternoon. Welcome to the September 16th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm President Catherine Staub. We are absolutely delighted to have you here today, whether you are in the room with me or you are watching on video starting Friday. So as you saw, I'm wearing my mask. I don't have my Rotary one today. I have my kindness one. The Rotary one is in the wash, but I think that notion of kindness is good any day. So you will see that I am wearing my mask when I'm not eating or drinking or up here at the podium. Just as a reminder, if you're new to being in person here, the Rouen Center Property Management really encourages everybody to wear masks as they are in the lobby and riding the elevator. But we also encourage you to do that here as well. We did not have anyone sign up to give a moment of inspiration again. All right, do I need to do the professor thing and say, come on now, let's be responsible people. We would love it if someone would sign up for the moment of inspiration moving forward. But today, I'm going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And now please wave at your fellow Rotarians. Fist bump, elbow bump.
So are you all going to move out and you got You're still working. It's a winter project now.
If you did not already fill out your postcard for a Rotary Club of Des Moines t-shirt, please do it today. But if you have already filled out your postcard for a Rotary Club of Des Moines t-shirt, do not fill out another one unless you want to pay for a second one. Or if, I don't think Jim Vickery is here, if you want to pay for 6 more so you can wear one every single day of every week, go for it. But you have to pay for the extras. We need your size. You can also give your information to Kitty. So if you're watching on video and you do not have a postcard in hand, you can give your information to Kitty. She needs your size, your name, and if you want to help donate to cover the cost of the shirt, indicate that as well. The t-shirts are pre-shrunk, 50-50 cotton poly. It's dry fit, and if you are interested in the weight it will add, it's 5.6 ounces. Yes, so I hadn't thought about that before, but anyway, they look fabulous and they sound like comfy t-shirts. So if you have not yet signed up, please do. And then the big announcement that Denise Essman and I teased last week on your table is our newest Rotary Club of Des Moines Fellowship sign up, our hiking fellowship. So Denise Essman and I are jointly leading this new fellowship group. Our first hike is planned for Thursday, September 23rd. We will meet at 5 p.m. at the parking lot at Brown's Woods. And we'll decide based on who's there and what you're feeling like and what the weather is that day, which trail we want to hike on that particular day. But we have ideas for outings, hiking when the weather is conducive to hiking, but also looking at this winter snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. And Rich and I were just talking about the opportunities if you don't own skis or snowshoes, you can rent at Jester Park or other locations. So lots of fun to be had in our newest fellowship group, the Rotary Hikers. Please sign up if you are interested. And we will, all ages, all abilities, all interest levels in hiking are welcome. We will figure it out and have a fun event for everybody. So with all of that, with me rambling, which I sometimes tend to do, I now want to welcome Rich Leopold to the podium. Rich?
While the machine is warming up here, just a quick naturalist joke. Do you know how many amoebas it takes to change a light bulb? 2, no 4, no 8, no 16, no 32. Sorry. I had to nerd out there at the beginning. I used to a long time work on a tour boat down in the Everglades, and I asked people for questions, and then if they didn't give me questions, I gave them moaner jokes, and I just kept on going until I got some questions. I had a lot of questions. So, thank you for having me up here today. Yes, my name is Rich Leopold. I'm Director of Polk County Conservation and a honored member of this club right here. Today it was supposed to be 2 of us, Luke Hoffman and myself, that was going to be presenting on the Polk County Water and Land Legacy Bond. Luke had another commitment, so all you got is me. But that's probably a good thing because I was going to inform and entertain. Luke was going to hit you up for endorsements and money. So just maybe be grateful that this should just be a relatively calm and entertaining presentation here. Polk County Conservation, just as a matter of introduction, we exist under the county government. So the Polk County Board of Supervisors appoints a conservation board. There's a 5-member board, that's who I work for, my boss, and then we get our money every year from the Board of Supervisors, even though it's managed by the Polk County Conservation Board. We are big, and most people don't know we exist. We have 15,000 acres here in Polk County, 23 major parks and trail systems, so a lot of the big interconnecting trails, the Great Western Trail, Gately-Wilson Trail, High Trestle Trail, those are Chautauqua Valley Trail, all of ours, and then some of our larger parks are Easter Lake, Thomas Mitchell, Jester Park, Browns Woods, a number of others. So that's what we do. Our mission is threefold. It's outdoor recreation, it's environmental education, and it's preservation of our natural resources. So we have a cooperative arrangement with the Department of Natural Resources, and the City Park and Recs and us are seamless sometimes. We work a lot. It's an odd entity here in Polk County because in most counties you have a city or two, and then you have the county, which is everything else. Well, in Polk County, the city has grown around us. So we have largely urban parks, Easter Lake, that's surrounded by the city. We still keep our flavor though. We're still a county conservation board and not a city park and rec. Today I want to talk to you about Polk County Water and Land Legacy Bond. And for introduction, there was a bond that passed in 2012 for $50 million. Let's see if I can figure out how to advance. There we go. This one is going to be 65. So in 2012, it was brought forward to the voters of Polk County on if they wanted to invest $50 million into parks, trails, natural resources, water quality, flood abatement, all of these different kind of things. Polk County said yes. 72% of the voters said yes to that $50 million. All of that money came here to Polk County Conservation, and I'll talk a little bit later about what we did with some of that money. That was 9 years ago, 10 years ago. We're near the end of that money. We want to continue doing that same great work on behalf of Polk County residents in central Iowa, actually. So we're going back for a $65 million bond. Now the decision to do it now, it seems kind of odd. It's in an off year, and I'm going to talk a little bit about an off year election. A lot of you know that. But we have seen our visitorship has just exploded with the amenities that we've created and the trail systems and water trails and everything else coming up. There's just a lot of pressure for people, especially with COVID. They want outside, physical, emotional, spiritual outlets. And so our use patterns have just exploded. Central Iowa Water Trails is coming on board. They have a need, and so I'm going to explain that too. They're a little part of this going forward. And the legislature, in their infinite wisdom, decided that you couldn't run bond issues during general election cycles. So we can't do it at the same time that state or federal offices. So that's why we have to do it in an off year. So November 2nd of this year, $65 million language will be on the ballot, and we need at least 60% to pass. We are very much not even a bipartisan, I would say nonpartisan effort, and I explained a little bit about what this is for. Here's the people in charge. So you'll see some familiar faces up there. Mark Ackelson, who was the former president and CEO of Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation and actually led the last effort. Tom Levis, an attorney, and has been a longtime board member for the Conservation Board like 10 years, so he's helped spend a lot of that other money. Pat Bodie, a lot of people know Pat. She was a former director of the County Conservation Board, former deputy director of the Iowa DNR when I was there actually, and has been working RDG and has her fingers in about 50 different pies at any given point in time. In fact, interesting story, she told me in her retirement, one of the things she wanted to do was set up a pie and tea stand along the High Trestles Trail. And I'm like, okay, Pat, what the H are you talking about? And she's like, I just want to make pies and have some tea, and people that are going, out to Madrid on High Trestles Trail can stop and get a piece of pie. Can I do that? I don't know. I don't even know what that looks like, but she's a good friend. Chris Hensley, of course, formerly city council person with the city of Des Moines. Jerry Nugent with Knapp Properties, a lot of you I'm sure know Jerry, and Ryan, a relative newcomer to the scene. Ryan is our board chair right now, and he's the philanthropic director guy at the Des Moines Playhouse. And so he's from West Des Moines. He's been a fantastic asset also. That's who's running this campaign. This is why we're doing it. So whenever you ask, water quality always polls very high. And we're one of the few agencies that actually does something about it. So we have boots on the ground. I'll talk a little bit later about 4 Mile Greenway and some of that, but when it comes to remediating stream, creating upland water retention, creating wetland capacity, doing all of those types of things, that's what we do. We have targeted acquisitions where we're looking at water quality or flood prevention parameters, things like that. So of course the Des Moines and the Raccoon Rivers are much bigger than Polk County, but we take care of what's here, and I'm a firm believer in if we take a more parochial interest in our local water bodies, that is going to have effects, money, politically, everything else upstream. Wildlife habitat and quality of life. Quality of life is one that we don't talk about enough, I don't think. In that we have, Des Moines is thriving, right? We know white collar industry here is doing great. The IT industry, the classic insurance industry, everything else that we do here is thriving. What do you need? A well-educated and well-motivated workforce. Where do those people go? Where it's fun. It used to be, when I was looking for a job, you found a job and then you moved there. Now, you move to a place you want to live and then you look for a job. So quality of life becomes a real economic driver behind a lot of this. So here's some of the nitty gritty. They're 20-year bonds. The cost to the average homeowner, the average price of a home in Polk County is $11 a year, 91 cents a month for what we're proposing here. Less than a cup of coffee, that's how they sell it, but it is very low when you think about overall property tax impact. Our advisors, which is the Trust for Public Land, they've done this all over the United States, and they say 20 is a great sell, you can even do 30. We come in and we say, Polk County right now, because of the way we've been operating on a county level, and I'll give it up for the auditors and the treasurer's office and the board of supervisors, and our bond rating, our valuations and everything else, we're able to keep that number to 11, which I think is pretty impressive. That last one there too, I'm just going to say we leverage. That money is gold. So when we get that money, we don't just spend it. We see how to spend it. And I love spending other people's money. So that last $50 million, last count, we were at 92.5 of spending. So 42.5 of other people's money. And I think we'll hit the 1-to-1 before we're done with that spending pattern. What have we done? So these are some of the big premier projects. These are the ones that look good on t-shirts and bumper stickers. Easter Lake Park restoration. We drained it, dredged it, fixed it up in the watershed, invested in hundreds of watershed practices and rain gardens and bioswales, filled it up again, built a gorgeous trail around the outside, if anybody's ever been there. 4.1 miles, 12 foot of concrete, and 7 bridges, I think it is. The 12 foot of concrete sounds boring, but it's important because these trails get such heavy use that how do you have the spandex warriors and the baby carriage on the same trail with not having conflict? When you got enough room, you can make that happy, so that make them all happy. So that's been happening at Easter Lake. Jester Park Nature Center. Overall, that project was about a $10 million building. It's amazing. If you've ever been out there, you should check it out. 4 Mile Greenway. So this was something that was unintended, one of my favorite quotes is Louis Pasteur, "Chance favors the prepared mind." So we knew, you know, through climate change and mapping and things like that, that the potentials for catastrophic floods are going to happen. It's not an if question, it's a when question. So are there agencies, people, processes thinking about what happens when? Yes, there are. Not as much as I wish we would, but quite a bit more than I thought we would 10 years ago. So 4 Mile flooded. It took away a lot of homes down there. It was the 4th 100-year flood in the last 9 years or something like that. So, you know, all our flooding models, throw them out the window. They had almost 300 homes, and they were looking at, do we rebuild? Again, knowing full well it's going to flood in a year, 2 years, 3 years, or do we do something about it this time? So we partnered with the city, $1 million of our money, 13.5 of the city. There's a buyout of about 300 homes. Those homes were relocated, and the remaining infrastructure was tore down. We now have a 640-acre greenway going through Des Moines and Pleasant Hill along the 4 Mile Creek area. We've got others around the city, Beaver Creek, Yater Creek, Walnut Creek. We've been working with cities. We all know that this potential is there. So this is something that can help to remediate, fix the stream banks, create flood retention and separation. Chautauqua Valley Trail, we do a lot with big trail connections in between communities. So we took that one clear down from where it was up at Chautauqua through Bondurant all the way to north side of Des Moines. We're eyeballing going across the north side of Des Moines along Broadway Street all the way over to, if you know where Bridgestone Firestone is there on 2nd, kind of sneak south of that and hook up with the Neil Smith Trail, another fantastic circuitous route that I think we'll be able to make there. And Thomas Mitchell at Camp Creek, that one's more in the eastern part of the county. Here's the distribution of what that money is going to pay for. So the split is water, parks, land, and trails. And you could talk a long time about each of those categories, but I don't want to go too much into those details. I do want to talk, before I get to what our next projects are, at some of the numbers here. Because I mentioned at the onset that a lot of people don't realize Polk County Conservation and the number of people that we have. We do a lot of tracking. So we have a lot of trail counters and vehicle counters and very sophisticated ways of figuring out how many people are in our parks. This last year, 4.1 million visits to our parks. If you take the numbers, and I don't mean to brag, but I will, you take every other major amenity in Polk County and add them together, they don't equal 4.1, 4.2. 31% increase over the year before. Okay, some of the things that we're going to do this go around. If you've been paying attention to the news, we just bought Sleepy Hollow. We've been working on Sleepy Hollow Sports Park with Rick and Mary Flatt for 2 years. And as of Tuesday, we did it. We made it happen. So we're going to have a major winter sports facility out there on that side of town. Right now we have at Jester, and we also have trails out at Chautauqua, but for the Des Moines Metro, this is going to be incredibly convenient. And not only are we going to put in cross-country and snowshoes, but they already have the sledding and the tubes. We're going to be looking at snowboarding, of course. We're going to bring back skiing, we hope. So we're going to be doing that development during the winter. We're going to redo that lodge, so it'll be a nice major event center, make it ADA accessible, spruce it up a bit. We're going to be putting in a huge campground, 60 full-service campground, 60-site full-service campground. We can't build campgrounds fast enough. And I don't know if any of you are campers or not, but holy cow, it used to be that if you wanted a campsite, say at Jester Park, you'd have to roll something, you'd have to go there Thursday and set up a tent, a cheap tent that you get at a discount store or something like that, just so you'd have a place Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, it's Tuesday or Wednesday. By Wednesday, our campgrounds are full of $30 tents sitting there waiting for the campers to come in on Friday. Now, from an income standpoint, that's fantastic, right? But from a what do we do for a living standpoint, that's kind of silly. And so the more campgrounds we can build, the better off we're going to be. Easter Lake is going to be our, Sleepy Hollow is going to be one of those. We also do state fair camping there. It also made sense from the trail standpoint. So a little further down here, you see Central Iowa Water Trails. 4 Mile runs through Sleepy Hollow. We've already got one inlet on 4 Mile at Mally's Park. We're going to put another one in at the 4 Mile Community Center. We're going to put out another takeout right here. Now 4 Mile right now is a trickle, right? There's drought in the water. But when 4 Mile is in the appropriate water level, it's going to be a wonderful place for that kind of activity. Oh, and last at Sleepy Hollow, it's right by the Gailey Wilson Trail. So it's going to hook up Altoona, Pleasant Hill, Des Moines, and then start shooting south to Carlisle, right? It's a great hookup for our region. Trails connecting communities. We've got a project right now looking at Polk City to the High Trestle Trail, shooting north of the city. I mentioned the one going across the top of Des Moines. We're still trying to figure out how to get Johnston, Grimes, Granger to Jester Park. So there's different philosophies on how that should happen, but we're still pushing and seeing what that looks like. Copper Creek mountain biking. So if you've been to Mount Pleasant Hill, and if you know where Copper Creek Lake is, on the north side of Copper Creek Lake, it's all woodsy. Yeah, that's ours now. So we just bought, I don't know, 42 acres or something up there. And one of the things we look at is the demographics and the kind of outdoor recreation we offer. We don't have a lot of single track bike lanes, mountain bikers, and things like that. We have Sycamore Trail, they love it to death. There's too many of them. We need more, and they have to go clear to White Rock Conservancy or somewhere else, which is okay, but it takes money out of central Iowa. Let's keep it here. So we're going to be making, Copper Creek is going to have mountain bike trails all over it. Water quality, habitat restoration, of course, that's always huge, and we do a ton of stuff. One of the things I'll mention with that too is we've been doing water monitoring for about 6 years now. So when they talk about central Iowa water trails, and there's people's concerns with water quality, legitimate concerns, but get informed, it's not always terrible. You know, we have some that will say there's no danger ever, go swimming, swallow a gallon, you're good to go. That's not true. We'll have some that say, you stick your foot in it, it's probably gonna rot off. That's not true, right? The truth is somewhere in between, and it depends on the water body. It depends on what you're doing in that water. It depends on the health of the individual and things like that. So like if you go look at Beaver Creek most of the year where Johnston has put the inlets and outlets, Beaver Creek's gorgeous. It's clear most of the year. Now clear doesn't always mean clean, but for the most part it's pretty decent. You look at the Des Moines and the Raccoon, they look nasty sometimes, especially the Raccoon in the spring. It looks like chocolate milk. That's a bad thing. We need to work on that. But for floating, no big deal, right? You can float on that water that's full of sediment, and that's not necessarily meaning it's bad water quality. As far as paddling, we've been doing these water monitorings for 6 years now. We do way more monitoring than the state of Iowa does. We do way more monitoring than Des Moines Waterworks does. Now, of course, their types of monitoring are different because Des Moines Waterworks is thinking about drinking water for 500,000 people. So that's what they're protecting. The DNR is so underfunded and diffuse that, you know, nothing but love for them. I know a lot about the DNR, but their monitoring program is not very rigorous. Ours is much more rigorous. So we're going to be able to perceive things that some of these other agencies are not. And we're in close, hip deep, I should say, no pun intended, with Central Iowa Water Trails, in that we're running the monitoring program. And as things get better or as things get worse, we're going to be able to know and then translate that risk to the users. Because there's a lot of people betting a lot of money on the Central Iowa Water Trails, a lot of businesses and governments going in on it. It's going to work, but it's going to need babysitting, right? And some good, accurate, predictable information when it comes to water quality and water levels. So we're working on that. I went off on that longer than I thought I was going to. How am I doing on time?
You've got plenty of time.
Plenty of time, very good. I'm gonna go into the polling. So this is a different demographic, right? When you get an off-year election, the people that vote are different than a general election. They're generally older, wealthier, and wiser. And conservative, right? This is a demographic that they watch school board elections. They watch local bond issues. They watch those types of issues and then get involved with it. So this type of polling, last go around, It was general public. It was 2012 when the vote took place. Early polls, this one here was 75% for the one you see up there. When we first started polling in 2011 for that 2012 one, it was 48%. They won by 72. Our early polls show 75% that would vote for it straight away. I always look for would. You don't want to get cocky, right? Things can go south quick in political world. So we feel really good, but we're not resting. We're getting out and talking to people, showing people what we're doing. Iowa Taxpayers Association and some of the more conservative fiscal groups, yes, please come, look at us, tell us what we can do differently. We're going to do this, but how do we make it better? So I think early on our polling is showing that it's really strong. When you start talking about water, so whether it's flooding or the quality of water that's going into our drinking water, that's off the charts, right? That's high 80s, low 90s all the time when you start talking about water quality. Drinking water sources, 91. So that a lot of people, more people, as time goes on, especially with the scares that we've had here in central Iowa, are willing to think more about that. By the way, one of the things I'd never seen before this last couple of years was cities wanting to spend money outside of the city to protect water supply. Now, if you're familiar with other parts of the country, that's commonplace, right? So like New York City protects hundreds of thousands of acres of water and watershed to protect New York City's water. But here, we have been blessed with such good water, surface water and groundwater, that nobody's paid attention until, oh my God, what if Saylorville turns south as far as microcystin or something like that? What if the raccoon dries up? What if, and we got 500,000 people that are saying, we were worried about too much water during the floods, now we're worried about not enough. How do we get a better understanding of this? So we look at both sides of that equation. Now, I'm not promising you that you vote for this and we'll take care of you forever. That's not the case. Nature, she's a cruel master, right? But we are paying attention to it closer than agencies had in the past as far as the quality and quantity of that water. And here's an accountability thing. So they always like to see, the potential voters always want to make sure that we have somebody looking at us under a microscope. I invite anybody to review our books all the time. I've been audited many times by Taxpayers Association and it's been clean so far. I still got my job. So we do invite that kind of scrutiny. This says something, 73% trust Polk County Conservation. What was it? I think it was 71% trusted the Polk County Board of Supervisors. That's unheard of. And when you look at polling, the presidential polling or your local legislator or the US Senator, it's always, don't know who they are, but they stink. The polling is always biased and discredited, if you will. It's harsh. So to get this through our educated voters that are going to be voting November 2nd, it was 300 randomly picked, but voting members of the public where we took this poll, I feel pretty good about that. So here's where Luke was going to take over and said, here's how you can write your check. Here's where you can send your, I'm not going to do that. I'm a political appointee. I don't do that kind of thing. If you're so inclined, you'll be able to find ways that you can help this effort. Now I'm going to stop and see if people have questions, comments, rotten fruit, whatever you got. Yes, sir.
I have a question regarding the trails and what they're proposing for the Des Moines River. And then there's been recent information that has come out that questions very seriously the quality of the water that would be flowing through that and whether or not people would feel welcome to go into that because of maybe health issues or whatever.
Sure.
You touched on it just a moment ago. Could you go into a little bit more detail what role Polk County would be playing with that and making sure that that message or that testing or however you're going to deal with that question is going to be addressed?
An informed question. I appreciate that, Mark. What he was asking about was the water trails, and especially through central part of the city here, how that's going to be taken care of, looked at, communicated to the public, those types of things. So that's a perceptive question, and it's incredibly important. Why are you going to invest $118 million in fun stuff in the water if the water's crap, right? It's an important question. So, as I was saying earlier, what is the water? we've been doing a lot as far as trying to figure out what that water looks like. The Raccoon River and the Des Moines River, by the way, are very different animals, right? Because the Raccoon River, it's clear over to western Iowa, comes across, it's mainly agriculturally impacted. The Des Moines also would be, except for Saylorville. So Saylorville has deposition, and when we get is just from here to up by Polk City, right? So those are very different. The type of water monitoring that we'll do, one of the challenges with looking at running water bodies is it's running, it's moving. So if you go to a beach and you take samples, it takes about 24 hours to run those samples as far as E. coli, an indicator bacteria. Well, in a beach, it just goes back and forth and back and forth, and so it's there. In water, in a running water body, by the time you test it and you have the results, that water's in St. Louis. That doesn't do you any good. So we're looking, we funded through Chris Jones and University of Iowa, IIHR, whatever that stands for, that we're looking at correlating turbidity, or how clear or cloudy the water is, with E. coli levels. So is it correlated and predictable that if turbidity goes up, E. coli goes up? If turbidity goes down, E. coli goes down. So that's one of the proxies that we're looking at that we think is going to be a pretty significant indicator of water quality. Another thing we're doing is direct sampling for nucleic materials. So you can now sample water bodies looking for RNA and DNA sequences that are human pathogens, direct human pathogens. That's a scary thing, because once you know, you can't not know, right? But we're working with the USDA lab up in Wisconsin that has done this on one other major water body, and now this is their second one in the United States, where we're going to be looking, we can even type them out. We can tell you if it's human, pig, cow, other animal, raccoon or whatever, so we can tell all that information. So once we start getting this information, then we're going to know, and then we put it into a risk assessment profile. So, do you have certain things that you say to pregnant women and children? You look at what they're doing. Are they going to be putzing in the water and splashing around? Are they going to be floating on top? Is it full immersion swimming? What are they going to be doing? And then once we have all of that put together, I've assembled a team of people way smarter than I am, PhD to get in the room kind of people, and they're going to be helping us, these scientists across the state, and getting us a risk profile. And then you have to be able to talk to people, because most of that stuff I don't even understand. And so we have a communications team looking at probably web-based tools that you'll be able to go into and look at what the risk assessment is for whatever user group you are. If you're going to be floating on it, if you want to throw the kids in inner tubes, whatever it is. So we're going to have real-time information. Two other parts to water safety that people don't think too much about is the water too high, is the water too low? I was really worried when we started doing this up at Beaver Creek, not we, it was Johnston that did it, and the water was pretty high when they first opened up that ramp. And we say to people, go get the water. And so a family goes out, Walmart, and they buy a whole bunch of kayaks and they throw in and they don't know what they're doing. That could be a problem, right? So we needed to talk about, how do we talk about when it's too high or expert only? When it's too low, you're going to be dragging your kayak half the time. If there are obstructions, so every time it rains in Iowa, cottonwoods, willows, maples they'll fall in. And those snags, we in the paddling world, we call them strainers for a reason. They can be very dangerous. So how are we going to actually get out and assess all these water bodies every time it rains? We got to do it on our recreational trails. So maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but every time the wind blows, I think it's over 20 miles an hour, I have to have a pickup truck on 51 miles of trails here in Polk County. And they ride up and down those trails looking for hangers, looking for branches that may have broken and not fallen, but they're waiting. And so we have that on a recreational trail. How are we going to do that in the water bodies? So I think we're going to find things that are surprising to us and that we can fix. I think, though, we're also going to find that it's not as bad as we thought it was in a lot of places. I've been part of environmental organizations who rally to show how bad it is to support change. That, in a way, though, has hurt us over time, because then people are totally freaked out about even getting into the water. So we have to overcome that, especially with urban and suburban populations. That was a long answer. I should be a politician or something.
Rich, you and I know each other, and I just mentioned to Bob, you're one of my favorite Democrats.
I'll take that as a compliment, I think.
No, it's a sincere compliment. And you do a good job with county conservation. Boy, you did a good job here. You bring a lot of information, a lot of passion. I want to piggyback on Mark's question. I'm not sure if I have a question or an observation.
Sure.
The Water Trails project has been around, and there's been a lot of money spent to educate people. I think a lot of people really don't quite get it. They're just plus minus, you've alluded to that. The business community has made a huge bet on this. A lot of money towards that. A lot of private, public money couldn't and wouldn't do it all. So they made that bet because of what you talked about, quality of life, right? I'd much rather be running your campaign than a campaign for money for the water trails.
Right.
And they've got there is an issue of volume and velocity, you talked about that, and water quality. It doesn't, sometimes, the smell test is an old phrase, but it's a truism. So my thought on this would be, I like this idea.
Sure.
Hensley's talked to me, I think this is a good idea, okay? So I'm there. But I think you've got to get corporate Des Moines. Nationwide's put $4 million into this, a lot of others. If they want the water trails, they've got to make this thing work. And you've got to take it to them with that seriousness and that simplicity.
Yep, nope, I totally agree. It was more of a statement than a question, but I could not agree with you more. When it comes to Central Iowa water trails, there's a lot of money, a lot of investment into this procedure already. So one of the things I try to be very cognizant of is who has the keys to the car, right? Yeah. So who's going to be running this thing? How is it going to be run? What are the accountability statements and everything else? We at Polk County Conservation, we started on the outside, and then we sort of moved and more we're becoming, again, hip deep in this whole process, right? So we're running the scientific committee. We will be running the ongoing monitoring program. We will likely have a lot to do when it comes to operations. Another thing that's happening with this bond, full disclosure, 65 million, 15 is going to water trails. But that doesn't mean we just write them a check and say, go have fun. 5 million is for Polk County conservation areas only, so that we're going to spend on our water inlets and takeouts and stuff like that. 10 million comes with strings. So we can only use bond money if we own or manage forever the property or amenity. That's why when we went in with Des Moines, even though it was most of their money in the 4-mile green belt, they said, it's like, if you want us to run it and you want some of our money, you need to give it to us. They signed over nearly 300 properties to us in that process. So the $10 million from this bond that's going towards Central Iowa water trails is likely going to look at a particular feature to start with. We have the Lawrence Skate Park now. We're going to have some type of water trails concession down there, something like that. On the other side, you got botanical gardens and the Asian gardens that are looking really good. We may be owning, operating, whatever, the Center Street project, maybe even the one down at Scott Street. That could happen. That is, somehow it's going to happen that we're going to have a major footprint on that. So hopefully that helps with some of the accountability on what's going to happen with it.
Well, my questions aren't nearly as brainy as Mark or Dave's. First off, thanks a lot for giving up my camping hack at Chester. I was going to go in this afternoon and claim my spot.
It's after Labor Day, you might be okay.
Okay, good. But regarding the bond issue, what to you is the least utilized park or offering that you have, and how will the bond enhance that? And frankly, what I'm looking at is to kind of spread the wealth a little bit,
Sure.
so that one place isn't so skewed to heavy use.
So the question here from John was, what's the least utilized park that we have, and thinking about demographics and geographic location as far as spreading the wealth. I'll talk a little bit about Chautauqua Bottoms Greenbelt. Most people don't even know it exists. It's 9,000 acres of prairie wetland along the old Skunk River channel up in the northeast part of the county. 9,000 acres. You ever been to Neil Smith National Wildlife Refuge? That's 7. It's the largest prairie wetland complex in the region, maybe in the United States. It's amazing, and it's growing. A lot of hunting, a lot of fishing, a few paddlers, a few hikers, and that's about it. We're going to be doing things to Chautauqua. So, some examples. If you go up 65, and right before you hit the curve, and off to the left there's a wayside stop that has a bathroom parking area and a little hiking trail out to an overlook tower. There's a house and barn and things right there. We're buying that. That's public knowledge now. It's going to be out there. And the house is 1880s. They have an ice house, an actual ice house there from the 1850s. Before there was anything, there wasn't even roads anywhere, and they have a old functioning ice house there. So we're going to turn that into a visitor center research station. We have tons of universities that are doing all kinds of really cool studies out there, and we want to facilitate that process. So we're going to turn it into a research station, but then also a visitor center where somebody can have a gateway. They can figure out off a major traveled highway how to get and experience Chautauqua. So that's going to happen. Now, what are we going to do at Chautauqua? We're going to do all the way from easy to a little bit more challenging. More challenging side, we're going to have adventure camping. We're going to have hike-in or paddle-in camping spots where you have to pack everything out, and it might be raised platforms in a wetland that you put a tent up overnight and get up in the morning, listen to sandhill cranes, and if you're lucky, have a river otter go by it, right? Wouldn't that be cool? We're going to have yurts and maybe some cabins out there. We're going to build a larger campground. We got one right now, about 20 sites on the northeast corner. It's always full, nobody knows about it. We're going to be building more of that. Go over to the way easy side. We've been talking about an auto tour for a long time. So if you know the area, there's 118th Street runs through there. It's a gravel road. It's a farm to market road, so there's some challenges there, but it's surrounded by Chautauqua. Horkin Marsh National Wildlife Refuge in Wisconsin, if anybody's ever been there, they have an auto tour where they slow down the traffic, they put in a bunch of bumps, they put in lookout towers, they put in turnoffs, they have a radio station that'll give you interpretation about ospreys or otters or whatever it is, and they facilitate a driving tour. That sounds kind of counterintuitive for a conservation organization, but that thing is incredibly successful. And that's what happens in our areas. I can't tell you how many hundreds of vehicles every week go through Jester just to look at the bison, just to look at whatever else is out there, right? So this is going to be successful. I also want to look at a side-by-side trail. Now there again, I'm very respectful. I'm an ecologist by trade, and we're not going to harm what's there. The habitat and the things that are happening. We have nesting sandhill cranes. Nobody has that in central Iowa. We have bobcat. We have all kinds of cool stuff out there. We're not going to damage that. But are there ways to have side-by-sides? You know, we have a large population of seniors or people that can't get around that well. Can we facilitate experiencing nature in those kind of settings? Last on that one, I want bison out there. It's been my dream for a long time. We got bison at Jester Park. We're actively managing that herd. We have successful young every year, cute little baby bison and elk out there. But then we have to cull the herd every year. We have to sell some off because we don't want it to look like a zoo or a feedlot. So we can only have so many out there. I think we could support a herd. The biggest problem right there is fencing. You got to have sufficient fence, and fence is expensive and not very sexy. But we're going to figure out a way in this whole Chautauqua renovation to make that happen too. So when you come to the visitor center, you can figure out camping options, travel options, hiking options, and look at the bison out back. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yes?
My question involves bike trails. When you have multiple jurisdictions, multiple organizations, how do they work together, and who gets to set the priorities to decide what gets done first and what goes to the back burner?
That's a great question. So the overall question was with bike trails, when you have all these different entities and all these different priorities and things like that, who gets to decide and how does that all happen? Well, I will say not well. It's been one of the most frustrating things since I've been here, is that you have all these different entities that have all these different ideas. So when it comes to interconnection policy, drainage policy, marketing, mapping, the size of the trail, if you have a defunct trail that's got potholes all over and it's a danger, who raises red flag and says, you know, so it's pretty much been the biking community self-policing at this time. I've been advocating for about 5 years here about some type of a centralized control. So a trails association or a trails authority or something like that. They don't even have to have taxing authority, I don't care. But can we do things to eliminate some of this middle bureaucracy, to combine our resources for efficiency, but then also for mapping and marketing and everything else? I really think that's necessary. So thanks for the question. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Rick, for the informative presentation you gave, but also for all your work making Polk County a better place to live and play. We are donating the book, National Geographic Kids Ultimate Bugopedia, which I know Rich was very excited about, in your honor to the Downtown School Library. Upcoming meetings next week, Debbie Durham, Iowa Economic Development Authority and Finance Authority Director. You will see a photo of the River Center, not of Debbie Durham. The reason for that is this is yet another reminder that we will not be up here next Thursday, but instead we will be at the River Center as the Embassy Club cannot host us next week. So there will be detailed information for you. You don't have to memorize this up here right now. But they also, at the River Center South, they have 2 hours of free parking in Lot B for us. So there's that convenience as well. And then September 23rd, we have Christine Laritzen Sand with the Laritzen Group. And October 7th, Chris no way, I was going to butcher the last name, Kandinsky? Thank you. Business record. He will be here talking with us. So thank you so much for being here today and for being a part of Rotary Club of Des Moines. We are adjourned.